Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. Uh, I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Gary, and Gary and I are going to talk about burnout. We're going to talk about work-life harmony, as we tend to call it, and we're going to get into a great conversation about this. I've had a lot, as I said to you, Gary. I've had a lot of feedback from people DMing me, so that they're really interested in this. So before we get into it, where can people get hold of you?
Yes, you can get a hold of me here on LinkedIn. If you enjoy what we have to say, hit that button, shoot me a message, connect with me. Also on my website, breakthroughplay.com. That's where you can find all my contact info. Where we can chat.
Cool. So give me a story. Give me a potted history. What's your journey, Gary? Because I know that you've done improv, you've done all kinds. So you've got a really interesting background. Give us a quick journey.
Yes. So technically, my background is in marketing communications. In
Right.
university, that's what I studied. Found myself in a bunch of jobs within that field. Eventually, running my own digital marketing agency, and then along that path somewhere, I found improv. Uh,
Right.
I'm not. I don't have a background in theater. I didn't study that, growing up. Someone just told me, "Hey, if you want to get better at public speaking, I think you should take an improv class."
Right.
And like most people who aren't familiar with the art form, they are a little taken aback, like, I'm a little scared of that. I don't think I'm that funny. And I am so glad that I took that class because it was a life changer for me. It gave me a new perspective on life. It showed me how to communicate in ways that, I didn't know. I found myself uh, better to adapt in stressful situations. I was a better communicator, yada, yada, yada. And I drank the Kool Aid. I dove headfirst into, the wisdom that is improv. And I did my best to try to get everyone to come on the journey. I would bring games that I learned taking improv classes to my team. I would do them at events. And then, like I said, I at one point was a co founder of a digital marketing agency. And when that business, when we decided to part ways, I was at this crossroads of, do I just go find another agency job?
Mm.
What do I do? And I made the conscious decision to dive into facilitation, into
Right.
team development. And here we are.
Mm. And Kathy, who's just made a comment, I mean, I met you through her.
Yes.
And we had I mean, I did a whole interview with her on improv, which is great fun. I mean, I dine out on it even today. Where people say to you, so what happens on your interviews? I said, well, I did improv comedy the other week. They went, what? So
I know, right?
it's a great communication mechanism. So tell us, when you talk about play, and because you talk us through that, and how you use
Yes.
play as a mechanism to get people to change or do things.
Yes. And so on this journey of learning about improv and these amazing benefits, naturally, I learned that what we're actually doing is playing. And if you think about when we were younger and when play was just something that we did and we didn't feel guilty about doing, a lot of awesome things happen. We're extremely creative when we're playing. When we're playing in groups, we have the right sort of boundaries and we take care of each other. And then when we're done, you feel closer to the people that you're playing with. And so on this journey, I stumbled along this book by Dr. Stuart Brown called Play and how it shapes our brain and whatnot. And Dr. Stuart Brown mentions that adults who don't play when they're younger, that don't engage in different types of play, have a tendency to end up as serial killers and whatnot. And
Okay.
now most people, fortunately, aren't on that path. But a lot of us, as we get older, we stop playing. We think, oh, that's
Yes.
just a childish activity. That is, just something that kids do. Is goofing off. They're just seeing it through one tiny little lens, and as a result, you're suffering for what Dr. Stuart Brown called play deprivation.
Right.
And, that's where the burnout can happen because you're not allowing yourself to reap the benefits that we are wired to do.
So in terms of work life balance, or work yeah, work life harmony. What is it? What are you? What is it that we should be doing? And
Yes.
should we be playing more, or what happens?
Yes. And so, first and foremost, I think we need to redefine play because, as I
Okay,
mentioned, most people see play through this tiny little lens,
I
and
think
that is
it's
just
Lego and cars and
yeah, that's one form of play.
hmm,
And this is the thing with play. Through there's a lot of smart people, way smarter than me, that have done decades of research on this, and they show that well, one, my form of play and your form of play may not be the same. What brings me joy, what brings you joy, may not be the same. And so, first and foremost, is realizing that play is normal and natural. And play is something that we do for the sake of doing it, something that brings
right,
us joy, something that brings us happiness, that just the fact that we're doing it is good enough, is not necessarily about the outcome. And so, once you start to realize that, and then once you start to realize that there's a lot of benefits to play, and then you can start to slot it in where it makes sense. And I started using the term purposeful play.
right.
What are the activities that are going to help you get very specific outcomes? And so, since we're talking, sort of the catalyst for this conversation is around burnout and whatnot. Um, Most people that are suffering from burnout, the reason they're suffering is that they're neglecting themselves.
Yes.
The work or whatever it is just becoming too much, that you're in this constant state of stress that you just start to shut everything out. And so, it can feel overwhelming to say, "Oh, just go ahead and play." When you're in that state, that's that's just like when someone is stressing out and you tell them to calm down. You're like, "Really?"
Yes.
And so my invite to all of them is, how can you just sort of ease it in? And it's almost like a replacement thing. So instead of, when you find yourself, drawn to maybe scroll through social media, have that conscious thought and say, "Oh, what is something that I can do instead that would bring me joy?" Maybe it's
Okay.
reading a book.
Mm.
Maybe it's
Skateboarding.
maybe it's skateboarding.
Yep.
Maybe, and again, for the people watching here, I bet you're one of those overachievers that have a lot to do, but maybe it's just taking a moment and looking out the window
Yeah.
and just allowing your brain to just sort of relax and decompress and step away from the work.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that taking time out is so important. So, what in terms of burnout, what are you? You talked about the triggers. What is it that's actually triggering burnout? I mean, I've been in situations where I sometimes, I can feel my body's kind of saying, this, you need to get some sleep, or you need to take
Yes.
some time out. You need a holiday. That type of thing.
Yes. And so with burnout's one of those slippery slopes where if you don't understand what those sort of milestones are, you can easily just sort of get sucked into it. And then before you know it, you're trapped in this hole and you're like, how the heck did I get here?
Mm.
Because a number of our societies, we place this sort of emphasis on this badge of honor of work.
Yeah.
I work 12 hours and this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for hard work. But I have this belief that you can only go as hard as you allow yourself to recover.
Yeah.
And so, some of the signs of, a burnout is, first and foremost, exhaustion. And then you start to lose that motivation for the things that you once loved to do.
Right.
Then you start to have, you find yourself frustrated or cynical or these other negative emotions that, again, these emotions are normal and natural, but if they are chronically there, if you are the person who is just now constantly, negative and constantly cynical, and then you find yourself having a challenge separating work from home, home from work, And then you're preoccupied, like you're at home and you can't help but to think about work all the time, every day, always. And
You
then
get
now
your
you're
laptop out and you
right, yeah, and now you're
top them
starting
out.
to have decreased satisfaction in just everything. Like it's just sort of blah. And so that those are the signs of burnout. And so what I love to talk about is the 3M approach. So
Okay.
um, and these are the different types of rest that you should be getting. The first one is macro. And so this is like sleep.
Yep.
And again, I'm not here to say that you need 6, to 8 hours, even though, it is, it will be helpful. But for someone who is consistently not getting that, again, that might seem like a tall order. And so, what I like to invite you to do is think about your nighttime rituals so that whatever amount of sleep that you're able to get, it's the best possible sleep. Are you the type of person that, um, is, on your device or on whatever until you're completely done, and then that's the last thing you see before you close your eyes, a TV screen or something like that? That's not going to allow you to get decent rest. How can you adjust it so that when you are asleep, for however long it is, you allow your brain to get into that REM sleep?
Mm.
And because what happens during that REM sleep, that deep sleep, your brain is repairing itself. If anyone's seen the Pixar film Inside Out, they elegantly describe, what happens, in our brain. And, it's true, they're moving memories from short term to long term. They're, starting the process to regenerate cells and stuff like that. That's necessary. So that is the first M, is the macro. The second M is the micro, and we briefly talked about that. Is what are the mini breaks that you're having throughout the day? And for someone who is going through burnout, this may be challenging because again, they may be seeing the world through this tunnel vision and have a hard time sort of separating, what's going on. And so my invite to you is, how can you slowly start to put buffers before and
Right.
after things that you do? How can you start to add transition time? And the reason for that, I like to call this like a power up. Microsoft recently did a study, since the pandemic, with brain scans of their employees, and they found that their employees that went from meeting to meeting to meeting, by like the third or fourth meeting, their
Mm.
brain is completely stressed out. However, the employees that had breaks in between, by the fourth meeting, it looked, pretty much the same, just like the first meeting, sort of
Yep.
rest and relax. And so, if you are in a position where you need to be a high performer, being someone who is just going to be a martyr and like, I'm just going to take it for the team and stick it out, that is not a recipe for success. So, what are the things that you could do in those micro breaks to power yourself up? And I mentioned, it can be anything, from reading a book, jumping jacks, taking a walk. They we like to say is, especially we're in this day and age where, because we are working more remote, we don't necessarily have those commutes, we are finding ourselves spending more time in
Yep.
front of screens. You need to spend like, for every hour or so that you're behind a screen, you need a few minutes to just let your eyes sort of readjust and move the body a little bit. So again, I'm like, well, how can you add something that's going to bring you joy into that space? And so
Yes.
that is the second M. And the third one, again, this is the challenge. Um, However, it is possible, and this is the meso breaks.
Right.
How can you step away completely from your work? Maybe it's for a few hours. Start list. Maybe on a Friday, stopping work early, and you get to a point where you can take a day off a month, and or some people, I know during the summers they take extended holidays, and this is not some frivolous thing. This is allowing your brain to recharge. This is allowing yourself to be stimulated again in the right way and get inspiration. Here in the States, Lin Manuel Miranda, who famously created the musical Hamilton,
Yeah.
he had that idea when he was on vacation. So again, there are
Yes.
so many stories about how we get these creative boosts when we are not trying to be creative, when our brain is in that default mode, which is like the sort of dreamlike state, the daydreaming state. But if you're always working, how can you allow yourself to be creative? So those are the three M's, and that helps you keep burnout at bay.
So how also you talk about preserving energy and energy management. Is that
Yes,
through breaks or is that another technique?
both. So
Right.
the breaks is allow yourself to sort of, it's like almost like a release valve. The other thing too is we need to start to be more conscious of the energy, our current state. Are we feeling tired? Or, do we need to be focused? Like, what state do you need to be in for whatever task? And how can you adjust your state accordingly? And so, and again, if all you're doing is going from meeting to meeting, task to task without any breaks, you're essentially just like this drone, this automaton, and yeah, you will burn yourself out. And so, what I love to do in my schedule is I like to look at the things that I have blocked out and put a note. Oh, this is creative, or this is
Right.
focus. And before I get into those, so in those buffer times, how can I do an activity that is going to put me into a creative state?
Mm.
So for example, like that's why I love improv. So if I need to go into something where I need to be thinking of ideas, I need to be brainstorming, before I even jump into that, I'm going to do something that is going to stimulate my brain. Maybe I
Right.
do like a quick, like little brain teaser puzzle.
Yeah.
Or as a leader, if I'm starting a meeting and I know that the people in that meeting needs to be creative, how am I being intentional about that meeting to do something that is going to get everyone in that right state?
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. I know myself. I, you can spend so much time at your desk. And I actually try and take myself to different places to do different things because otherwise, and another thing that I did was turn all the beeps and bongs and everything off on my, so I don't get any of that. Because what happens is a piece of mail comes in, and then you're immediately going looking at it, and you've lost the creativity.
Agreed. Yeah, and you bring up a great point, Tim, about different zones create different states. I
Right.
was talking to a colleague of mine, and he was talking about writing. He's a writer. He writes numbers of books, and he says when he needs to, just get into that writing state, he will go to a cafe, and there's
Right.
something about that sort of noise, that the hustle and bustle of people that are sort of around him, but he's with people, but he's alone, and it, again,
Yeah. Yeah.
vice
Yeah.
versa
Yeah.
for him,
Hmm.
allows him to
I've
be
done that
focused.
myself, where I've gone to
Yeah.
to cafes, and even though there's noise, you're kind of the noise actually enables you to focus.
Yes. Agreed.
Whereas actually, when I've written my books, I actually like total peace and quiet. And I actually, my partner we agree it's going to be a writing day, and she goes off and sees the family or something like that, and I just sit there and write.
Yes. And this is all about intention. Again, and this is what happened with the pandemic, because it happened so quickly.
Hmm.
We just sort of had to react, and then we started working, from the kitchen table or whatever we had.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily conducive to the energy that we need to have. I like to say the environment always wins. And now that we are starting to get into this like sort of new normal, my invite to you is, how can you audit the spaces that you are working in and seeing, is it conducive to the state that you need to be in? If you are working from home now and you need to have inspiration, be creative, can you adjust your working space so that maybe you have some natural light coming in, or maybe you have some things that can spark creativity, or produce happiness, and it's not just some bleak corner where you feel like you're in a jail cell.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I look out over. I have natural light. There's a window here, and I have natural light coming in. I'm also very lucky because actually, I actually look out over a nature reserve. So there's no houses or anything. It's trees. So, but I think for me, when I was working in an office, I would always go out at lunchtime, whether it was raining or whether it was sunny, and I would just walk around because I just wanted to get the fresh air and just get away from everything. And I think, I'd come back and there'd still be people sitting at their desks just like they were when they got there at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'd come back refreshed, probably a little bit more creative, a little bit less stressed. And I just always felt that was a better way of making my day and making my creativity better.
Agreed. Yeah. And so, like I said, you can only go as hard as you allow yourself to recover. This would be for like another episode, but there's so many positive benefits to nature. You know,
Yes.
we can't all go and take nature baths and, with amongst the pines and stuff like that. But like you said, regardless of the weather, stepping outside, where you can hear, the sounds of nature, whatever that may be, having some greenery, there are a lot of health benefits for that. It
Yeah.
does stimulate creativity. And you're right. You're by just powering through lunch, just because you think, you know what, I just need to just keep going. It is not the recipe for success. Matter of fact, there's a lot of data that suggests that the longer you work without a break, the more likely you're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's going to cost you more time.
It is. And ultimately, yeah, it does. It takes longer. So if you want to do it quicker, you need to actually take time and look after yourself.
Yes.
Gary, fascinating subject. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. I think burnout is something that we've all had to, all our routines have changed over the last 2 years, 18 months. And I think we've all had to look at that. And it's just too easy, especially if you're working from home, just to sit at the desk and just keep piling on the meetings. And then 6, 7 o'clock comes around and you suddenly realize how tired you are.
Yeah.
You just can't keep doing that. Anyway, remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yes. If you were inspired by this, if you were intrigued by this and you want to keep in touch, again, we're here on LinkedIn. So I will jump into the comments. I'll say hi. You could, click on that link and connect with me, or you can go to my website, breakthroughplay.com. That's where I have all of my sort of musings and insights and stuff like that.
And you're always up for a bit of a conversation, aren't you? So
love it.
Yeah.
Gary,
thank you so much for coming on today and sharing that. And I hope people got something out of it. So, burnout, as I say, is just so important and sorting
it
that.
Is. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tim, for having me.
Thanks, Gary.